all my steps.
Okay. Somebody lost their Samsung around here, so if you could look underneath your tables, underneath your feet, your regalia, your bag, and then
Yeah,
so
it's on silent also.
it's on silent as well, so you can't call it. So if you feel something vibrate, it's don't worry about it, okay? It's probably somebody trying to call it, so it's in vibration mode. Don't worry about it. So I want to thank you all for coming, and those who've traveled far and wide. We're going to start off with an opening prayer, and Kenneth Frank has kindly agreed to give us the convocation, the opening prayer for this meeting. So we're going to start off with Kenneth Frank.
Let's pray, keep in mind, pray for our conference and the young people and the people that work hard at the university and the people that we leave behind, and with that, Kewala chovati kuchacha je kakuti chuktrenen je haino tenago jenana tatakoda tsai. Kewala chovati kuchacha je kakuti ako di thai di yenji di thai tatak koda tsai kuin jek di yenji henet ai enje tatak di nenje kunzi kunatsi. Kewala chovati kuchacha je kakuti ako Taiwan Jekun Z in Enjakunaki go, Taiwan Jek in Enjakun Takechetinli, Kunzi Kukatere Alenjet, Taiwan Jek in Enjakun Z, Dinenja Artry the Iwan Z Kukatere Alenjet, on Tarnachan Artry the Iwan Jektre, Kutsatra Heta Enjet. Ako kekwa chovati kuchacha je kakuti ako za hasan nitacha ako kekwa chovati kuchacha je kakuti za ketro nathan je kuteket ako na adri ne shud na tako katende go ako kechet na go ven jet hai kunzi chwa cha enjet ko te ve ko heza enjet kekwa chovati kuchacha je kakuti Ako nchen tinji nishacha eli ako nichen ko vegon li kon tinji hanje cheji da tak kahin li ko nchen tinji ilsak jedil ki na da tak nchen tinji jehkwa raidil ki ko da tak ki kwa chovati ko cha je ka ko thi na trin shoot na shina shoot da tak ko chang ko na chi ko Kewa chovati cha je kakuti chencha di sinai ko taikun je kun sigu ki tere ta enjet ako ki tan chanti cha ko na ko chukchen di ako kwatla ke enjet kewa chovati ko cha je kakuti ako di tegwan cha di je ke tere chel da tak ako di kya na di lak na da tak ako kun si Kon ketin je kun si ko kanati ko kwale cho ju ha khoin li di khoi ke kwan ko kutle kun si ko sena senja ku ji aya ko chang ko na che ko ju no ri je kutle to ka hanai ta thak ko ke tan chan a ko ju chan chan li nai khoi ta thak ko kutle kun si senja ku ji ko chang ko na che ko ke wa chobri ku cha je ke ku thi ko di Chaya Hanilina ako Ketan Chan Aikuiji Hago Sankona Sego. Wala Koji Ketchet Naiko to Vego Heza and Jet the train and Salnight and go Yenta go to Vego Heza and Jet go. The Watch over the Kuchacha Kakuti ako Norige titi kinekul teji ako kinekul te tatak ako nantleje ko he ako. Kwa chovti ko chachaje kakwati konsanja kunsi tatak haslok na atrina shoot na tatak ti katan lego. Kwa chov ntinje Jesus Christ vorije. Amen.
Thank you, Kenneth, Frank. Before we invite Steve Guinness up, I want to do really quick safety announcements. In case you feel the vibration, and still telephone, okay? But, oh, you found it. Yay, she found it, yay. First, I want to introduce myself. I'm Sean Topcock. I'm one of the co-chairs. But there's the exit signs up there, so if in case of emergency, those that are in the top row can go over to the exits over here. Those that are down below here, don't go through here. That's a dead end. Go through this area over here. It leads right outside. So, and be careful outside. It's slippery. But of course, it's Alaska, so always expect it's always slippery around this time of year. So, but if you have fallen, please report it to one of the volunteers, and we'll be able to help you out in that way. But I'd like to invite Steve Guinness up to help you welcome you all to the 5th Annual Alaska Native Studies Conference. So, Steve Guinness, thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure for me to welcome all of you here this morning. And I wanted to thank Kenneth Frank for his prayer this morning. If you understood the language, it was a very meaningful message and prayer to all that are gathered here, and not only those that are gathered here, but folks from throughout our region here. So thank you, Kenneth. You know, I really didn't know what I was going to convey here today. There is one thing, though, I would like to just share with you all, is that I'm very appreciative of the university having an Indigenous program within the system. I think it's vitally important that our people's way of life, their language, their culture, etc., are all incorporated in all of our school systems, not just in the university. And you're taking the leading role, in my view, of doing exactly that. And for those institutions, school districts and the like, and F&A, we're incorporating language into our operation. And, you know, there's not very many fluent speakers around anymore. And the university could be very helpful to us in providing us the assistance we need, the guidance we might need to incorporate these into our operations. And F&A just got a $1.5 million language program, starting at a very young age, Head Start, preschool. And I really look forward in getting that off the ground. But you know, our challenge is this, is that we're having a very difficult time trying to find Khoikan speaking folks. And that's a real challenge for us. So if you know of any folks out there, please refer them to us so we can, maybe interview them, have them fill out an application, that type of a thing. So, I was born and raised in Fort Yukon, which is a village northeast of here, 160 miles northeast of here. I was born there on March 6th of 1950. So I've been around for 67 years. And over that time, I've seen a lot of change, even in that short period of time, among our people. And some of it is not good. Some of it is just not good. Especially in the area that has to do with our language and our culture. It was kind of frowned upon. Like, you really need to learn the Western way. You need to let go of who you are, basically. That was an absolutely wrong message. So that's what we're dealing with today. And it's a huge challenge for us because, like I said, not very many people are fluent. Not very many people know about their own cultural background. So it's a real challenge for us. And our elders are passing on at a pretty fast rate. People that could give us the guidance and the voice we need. So, I applaud your efforts here. And I hope that that'll continue, that'll be a priority within the university system. That's vitally important to all of us. We bring value to the state of Alaska through our being Native. And it's so, the kind of change I've seen over time is it's just like what Isaac Tritt told me once, an elder, also a priest from Arctic Village. He said to me, I heard you got elected as chief of Fort Yukon. I told him, yep. And he said, remember, he told me, when you're in leadership, it's like the cross, he said. And he said, you know how the cross is like this? I said, yeah. He said, remember, you're right here. And you can't go too far this way, and you can't go too far that way, right? Quite an analogy. And that stuck with me. That really has stuck with me. So I try to stay in the middle, because I'm really proud of who I am. There's nobody in this world that's going to change that. They're not going to try to assimilate me into somebody I'm not. I won't go there. I just absolutely will not go there. So I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of the fact that I'm fluent in Cochin. And I have, I think, a pretty good understanding of my culture. probably much more to learn yet, you know. I can't say that I'm an expert. I know everything about my culture. That would be telling the truth. But the fact is that I'm proud of who I am. And I try to demonstrate that in everything that I do. So again, I appreciate the opportunity just to say a few words here this morning. And again, I applaud the university's efforts and what they're doing in the area of Indigenous studies. And I pray that you all will continue to do that. And we have a variety of different people here. It's not just Native people that's sitting here. There's a lot of other folks here that has that same interest. And so it's a good thing that we're all on kind of on the same page and trying to move forward. So with that, thank you so much, Masik Cho. God bless you all.
Okay, Steve, on behalf of the Alaska Native Studies Planning Committee, we'd like to thank you with a print by one of our artists here, Sandra, is it Sandra Demerit? And she was a student here, graduated, and has returned home, so hopefully you can remember us. And thank you for your progressive leadership at FNA and always helping move things forward and yet retaining our cultural values and partnering with us whenever you can. So thank you.
Thank you.
We'd also, we forgot the gifts, but we'd also like to recognize Kenneth for his wonderful blessing this morning. So Kenneth, would you come down so we can gift you with a print and also just give you another round of applause for grounding us and starting things in a good way? I'm not really a mic person. I know that seems surprising because I am outgoing, but I don't like to be behind a mic. But Van Gwinzi, good morning. My name is Jessica, and I am the co-chair of this conference. But that's hard for me to say because we have so many people that worked on this conference. You do have two co-chairs that stand at the mic, but really the backbone is out at the registration. They're running to get coffee. They're making things happen. And so if we have any of our planning committee and volunteers in the room, would you just stand for a minute so people can see who you are and be recognized? Kay, I see you. Deka, Mike, yes. Let's give everybody a round of applause. Sue, Rich, Larry. And then there's a couple ladies who are probably running around, Kathleen Meckel, Professor Kathleen Meckel, and Amanda Lash, who's done just about everything. And Leona Long, we all are doing this together. So while we're the co-chairs, we have a great team that really has done the work. And so we're just the face of many, many people. So glad to see you all here this morning, and I hope you have a wonderful time.
Jess is a professor at the Department of Alaska Native Studies and Rural Development, and she's almost done with her PhD. So, yeah. And uvula lotak kanikadutin uvunga ataga sikluk apaga sunguk anaga ailinmi uvunga korakmu. Good morning. My Nipak name is Asikluk, and my White Fox name is Sean Topcock. I'm the other co-chair. I'm a faculty member at the University of Alaska Fairbanks School of Education Department, and but yes, just there's other people that have been involved in volunteering. There's the young lady that has a red shirt on at the very top of the stairs. If you could wave your arm, please. Right next to her, she has a red shirt. It's okay. So if you ever have any questions about where to go or anything like that, find her. She'll be on her phone. And so, no, I'm just joking. No, anyone with the red shirt, Rich has a red shirt, and any one of us, if you have any questions about that. But it's my pleasure to introduce the following the administration, the University of Alaska Fairbanks administration, who supported this conference financially and also as supporting it through many different efforts. So I'd like to first introduce our University of Alaska Fairbanks Provost Susan Hendricks up to welcome you all. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Well, first of all, I do welcome you definitely to the Trothyada campus. It's wonderful to see so many people here. That's what's, for me, the most special thing about attending this conference this morning, is to see so many people who are scholars in the area of Indigenous studies and Alaska Native studies and Alaska Native languages related fields. If we had had a conference like this 20 years ago, it probably would have been a little bit smaller, but we have so many more people now working in this area. It's a wonderful thing for Alaska Native people. It's a wonderful thing for people of all kinds to have the opportunity to learn about Alaska Native languages and cultures. I also want to say that having a conference is particularly special because it lets people who, and this happens in all kinds of scholarly fields, not just this one, it lets people get together who would not normally contact each other at all. We have many people from other communities in the state here today, and it's easy to be working in a scholarly field. It's easy to be working in your office or in your field site work all by yourself, not having the opportunity to interact with other people. And you can do wonderful work that way. But amazing things can also happen when you are given the opportunity to talk with others who are working in related areas or even in distant areas. We found over the years that a lot of the greatest discoveries come when people from two different fields talk to each other, work with one another, and find out that, in the overlap, in the connection between the two areas, you will find new ideas. So I encourage you to reach out across all the people that you see here today, see what new conversations you can start, what new ideas you can find. So once again, I welcome you. Thank you very much for coming, and I hope to have great things come of this conference.
Sorry, I'm running from outside to inside. So next we'd like to invite up Dr. Dana Thomas, Chancellor of the University. Dana?
Thank you so much. Wonderful to see you all here today, and good morning to everybody. It's my honor to follow Steve Guinness, and I want to thank him for his kind words about the university and his encouragement for us to do more. It's a charge that we welcome. Right? Like the provost, I want to welcome you to the Trothyada campus of the University of Alaska Fairbanks for the 5th Annual Alaska Native Studies Conference. A unique feature of the university's mission is the emphasis on the circumpolar north and its diverse peoples. And one of UAF's core themes is connect Alaska Native, rural, and urban communities by sharing knowledge and ways of knowing. Thus, holding this conference here aligns well with the purpose of our university and is in fact woven into the fabric of UAF and is a priority for us. This year's theme, Sustaining Indigenous Livelihoods, explores the connection Alaska Natives have with the environment, cultural practices, and contributions to academia and research. My wife, Kay, who is somewhere here, right in the middle, right back here, my wife, Kay, and I, as lifelong Alaskans, grew up in families practicing the subsistence lifestyle that defines many of us in the North. Kay grew up in Dillingham, and I grew up here in Fairbanks. As UAF graduates and longtime employees, I'm afraid to tell you how long, we've experienced and witnessed the evolution and growth of UAF. Much like Steve Guinness mentioned, we've seen a lot change here, right? In particular, we watched Alaska Native and Indigenous Peoples programs, Rural Student Services, the Department of Alaska Native Studies and Rural Development, Cross-Cultural Studies, Rawhide, Native Arts, Alaska Native Language Center, Rural Human Services, Tribal Management, the Center for Alaska Native Health Research, and culturally relevant teacher education programs develop over that long period of engagement here. In our early years, we were excited about the first undergraduate classes that were offered in these areas, and now we've come to celebrate the achievements of students and research faculty and degree programs that range from certificate through PhD. We're just thrilled to have seen that change over time. Alaska Native faculty and Indigenous-led research are on the rise, and we need to actively work together to increase our numbers and levels of participation throughout the University of Alaska system. Clearly, we have further to go, right? What better way to positively impact the development of curriculum and pedagogy rooted in Indigenous knowledge, languages, and cultural practice? I'd like to extend a very special welcome to Nobel Peace Prize nominee, Dr. Sheila Watt-Cloutier, who will deliver the keynote address this morning and discuss her work showing the impact of global climate change on human rights, especially in the Arctic, in relation to Indigenous people. I also welcome to the many presenters that we will meet in the next 2 days, including the panelists for tomorrow's session on young leaders. We all like to see that next generation stepping forward, right? Marjorie Tahone, Samuel Johns, and Olivia Shields are those leaders. UAF was established on this hill in 1917. So we're celebrating 100 years of higher education. And this conference helps set the stage for our next 100 years. It gives us a direction for the future. Thank you all for being part in helping to champion this work in the field of Alaska Native Studies and contributing to institutional transformation. Welcome.
Thank you, Chancellor Thomas, and thank you, Kay. Our next speaker is Dr. Steve Atwater, and he's with the he's the interim dean for the University of Alaska Fairbanks School of Education Department. When we submitted, the committee submitted and solicited for funds for the conference. I've submitted it to all of the departments. Holy cow, I was just submitting and people were getting tired of seeing my name. But again, the provost office, the chancellor's office, the School of Education was the only college and school that said, yes, we're dedicated to this conference. So they're the ones who gave us some funds. And so I invited Steve Atwater to talk and to welcome you all as well. So Dr. Steve Atwater.
Well, good morning, everyone. I recognize a lot of you, and those of you that I don't, my name is Steve Atwater, and I'm, as Sean mentioned, the interim dean of the School of Education here at UAF. It is my honor on behalf of all of the School of Education faculty and staff to welcome you to the Alaska Indigenous Studies Conference. The School of Education is again pleased to support this event and is also very proud that one of the co-chairs is one of our own, Dr. Topcock, who is one of our tenure track faculty. So we feel really good about that. I know that many of you know, but the UAF School of Education has a long history, and that's in Alaska terms, not in indigenous terms, but a long history of preparing teachers and counselors to work with Alaska Native students. The School of Education's pioneer work in indigenous education begun back in the 70s and the 80s. And I did want to mention and recognize Dr. Barnhart, who is here, and he was one of the pioneers back in the 70s and the 80s who led that work. So this work continues today with faculty refining our programs to better meet the needs of our Alaska Native students. And our faculty research focuses on place-based education and language education and is mostly tied to our Alaska rural schools and to our Alaska Native students. The faculty and the staff at the UAF School of Education take very seriously our responsibility to the mission of the UAF, and Dr. Thomas mentioned that mission, and our preparation of teachers for Alaska's diverse communities and our graduate work prepares our students for lifelong learning and careers. On a personal note, I spent a lot of time in rural Alaska teaching and administering schools with Alaska Native children. And when I look back at where we are today, I'm both pleased and also disappointed with the state of education for our Native children. I'm pleased in that there is more and more recognition of the important role of Native language in our schools. And I'm also pleased with the increasing role of place-based learning. The local context of rural Alaska is more and more being incorporated into the K-12 environment. And of course, we know that that makes a big difference to the learning for our students. But I'm disappointed in that most of the teachers for rural Alaska are not local, but like I was 30 years ago, coming from the outside. My hope then is that this conference will advance ideas that will help guide our Alaska Native youth to the teaching profession. And looking around, I see 3 girls over there who should be teachers. And so I think there's lots of examples of children that are coming up that have to be steered into that profession. It's critical. Like many of you, I get lots of blurbs that come across my email and internet, and there was one yesterday showing the significance for African-American students of having an African-American teacher. And just 1 year of teaching with an African-American teacher for African-American students makes a lot of difference. And we know the same is true for Alaska Native students, so we desperately need more and more Alaska Native to go into the teaching profession. With that, I want to close and say thank you for having me, and I'm really pleased to be able to support this conference, and I wish you a good 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Steve. I also need to, I guess I've neglected to mention that I'm offering this class, the conference as a professional development for those educators. So I'm now announcing that, so I don't get in trouble with my dean. But it is offered, and I have the paperwork, so you can see me or see one of the people. I'll drop off the paperwork up at the front desk. Our last welcome speaker is Vice Chancellor Yvonne Peter. He's been a strong advocate for this conference, not only for this conference, but for other conferences. And he's been part of the planning group, and he's just been a strong advocate. So I'd like to welcome our future doctor. He's working. He's close to getting done with his PhD. So the future Dr. Yvonne Peter Reboff. So Yvonne Peter.
Gee, no pressure, huh? I wouldn't say anyone has any expectations on me. Not to do anything, really. Shalak dai, Jikvan Gunzi, Tratia da, Naholtin, Shoitli, Shojer Ivan Peter Oji, Shrank Ogotsnitli, Tanan Guichi. I feel so honored actually to be able to stand here and be looking out at all of your beautiful, mostly smiling faces. Those who, I know some maybe didn't have enough coffee yet, but you didn't need to raise your hand, but thank you. Arriving here this morning, the feeling that came over me as I was seeing many of you come in was the feeling of a family coming back together. And it's such a powerful feeling to feel and to know that we're a part of something very important for our people and the future of our communities and our state in so many ways. We know the interconnections between the work, whether it's focused on language or salmon or moose, to the wellness of our people, to the sustainability and viability of how we're going to move forward, not only in our communities, but broadly within Alaska and within humanity. I believe firmly that within our knowledge systems as Indigenous peoples, that there's a tremendous value that we're responsible to carry forward and to share with others. Also, this morning to hear the prayer offered by my Shah, Kenneth Frank, and then also Sheila Steve Guinness welcoming and feeling very humbled to be able to also then be standing up to share an extension of their welcome here to the interior. Some of you were here yesterday for the pre-conference, and what an incredible experience I understand that many of us had, including myself. I was actually with Kenneth and his Vavat, Caroline, who were teaching in the Gwich'in language. And I probably shouldn't have, but I spent the full 4 hours in that classroom immersed. And for me, it was the first time I was in a Gwich'in class since the 1990s. And it was a very powerful, and Alan, the other Gech'atan that was there with us yesterday as well, it was so moving. And it was just that reminder of the importance for us to be prioritizing this work in our life right now. And so really, I want to also, I know that it's been said once, but we all know in this room that it's the people that are doing the work that are behind the scenes often that really make these things happen and make them possible. And I have had the unique position of getting to watch many people work on many projects and initiatives and conferences such as this over the last few years, and seeing people, not leaving till 8 or 9 at night or being in for whole weekends just to make this happen. And so I really want us to give a huge round of applause for the co-chairs and for all of those who contributed to work, faculty, staff, students, to support making this conference happen. Thank you so much. I also want to, before I continue, it's almost like when I look out too at all the elders, leaders, people that have been in the forefront of this, I wish I could just go through the whole room and name each one of you to honor you individually, but I want to thank you all for being here with us this morning and over the course of this conference, continuing to share your knowledge and understanding with us as learners. And we appreciate that tremendously. And for the younger people that are here too, I'll include myself in that group. For a little bit longer, as much as I can, I'm gonna hold on to it. Thank you all for being here, because we really need our younger people to feel the spirit of the work that we're doing, understand its value. And I know as leaders, we're working hard to reflect the value that we put into Indigenous knowledge, languages, understanding, and studies. And we're going to continue to push hard to champion that. I also want to thank our university leadership, Dana, Susan, and Steve, who joined us, because they also work tirelessly behind the scenes and have been, I've seen them in action as staunch advocates for this work. And while we don't get the chance to see them all the time doing that, I've had the pleasure of working behind closed doors with them, trying to champion and make sure that we protect and continue to prioritize Indigenous studies within the university. And I want to thank you for that effort and work that you put forward. Finally, I'm so excited about the two keynotes this morning and then the panel of the leaders tomorrow as well. Sheila and she was just, when she arrived this morning, she said, "How long has it been since we've seen each other?" And I said 10 years, and she said, "No, it's been more than that." And I really want to say thank you for taking the very long journey to join us here at the Trothyada campus and share some of your experience, knowledge, and passion for this work. I got to meet Sheila many years ago when we were doing work in the international arena, and she was an inspiration to me. And I feel so blessed that over the years I've been able to have many people that, even though they didn't know it, they were my mentors. Watching what they did, how they engaged, how they relate to people, especially in the international arena, so that as a younger leader back then, I could learn how to be respectful of that diversity at the international level, but still not back down to advocating strongly for our people. And she was one of those leaders that helped me to grow in that way. So finally, I think that we want to do a welcoming through song for you all to the gathering. And for this, what we'd like to do is invite any of you who are from here in Tanan, is what we call it in Guchin, from Fairbanks, to please come down and join us. We're going to sing a few Dana songs from the interior, but then also a Nupiaq song as well. So anyone who is from here would like to just join us to sing along. Even if you don't know the songs, you could be a part of our welcoming to everybody who's come here and traveled here to the interior. One of the things that I always encourage, some of you know that I do a lot of work with youth, and I always tell them, hey, it's good to step out of your comfort zone sometimes. So I see a few of you up there that are from the interior, and please come down. This is a part of our interior welcoming to everyone who's coming. And thank you to everybody, too, who traveled from afar to join us here at this conference.
we're such a diverse amount of people up here. We have people from all over the interior, and I'm really happy to try to hear this guy sing right here. He's a good singer. He's from Milano.
This next one was made by my great-grandpa for a lady from Nolado, and one of my favorite songs to sing. And this one is called Airplane. Hey, hey, ha, he, ha, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, سقانقا دانا تتغيثني غو دانا قتنا قد صغوني قتلي تتان قد سلاسنا هي 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 Airplane, maqatsitiya tlakun. Airplane, maqatsitiya tlakun. Dogatlo se enono tolton. Hey, 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 hey. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to say something really quick about Tristan. So the theme of this conference is sustaining Indigenous livelihoods. And Tristan, how old are you? Can I ask? 19. And he's a leader. He's recognized in his community, and he works at the elders' home. So he takes care of our elders, and he carries the songs. And it just brings me to tears to see him, and I'm so grateful for young leaders like him to step into leadership and do it proudly. So thank you, Tristan.
We have, this is not only Alaska Native Studies Conference, but we have some travelers from Aotearoa and New Zealand. So they requested to respond as well, and now would be a perfect time to, you're welcome to do it there, or you come down here and share if you want.
Let's give him a hand.
katoa e noho mai rā mō tō karakia mo tēnei ata. So just like to thank you all for having us here on your lands, on your native lands, and welcoming us here as part of your conference. Firstly, just like to acknowledge the elder who did the blessing for us here today. From our people to you, thank you for that blessing over us and over our time here on the lands. We also thank those who are hosting the conference, who have welcomed us here, and to the people who have shown us a customary welcome. We thank you for that also. We come from New Zealand, Aotearoa, from various different tribes, so we bring our people and our whānau with us here today. We're from the northernmost part of New Zealand as well as the central around the Auckland area. So we'll just quickly introduce ourselves as a matter of thanks to have us here today. Huria hau no Ngāpuhi Te Raroa. So my name is Sheila Watt-Cloutier. I manage the Moku Foundation, and I'm also doing a fellowship on intergenerational leadership, and we'll be speaking tomorrow at your conference.
Tēnā koutou katoa, he uria hau no Ngāti Tata Waiwakua, ko Kahurangi Taylor tōku ingoa. Kia ora everybody, my name is Kahurangi Taylor, and first of all I just want to thank you all for having us. It's been amazing to be here in Alaska, but I also wanted to acknowledge the movement of wanting to learn the language. I grew up through total immersion Māori primary school, and it's a norm in New Zealand. And then went on to high school where we could speak Māori, and also you could learn Māori at university. So the efforts that you guys are doing and the progress that you're making in those areas is really good to see on this side of the world as well. I manage a charitable trust within my tribe, Ngāti Tata, and we work with young people and future leaders. Kia ora.
Kia ora, ko Quinta tuku ingoa, maonua hau, ko ngā tākatoa tuku iu. So, hello, my name's Quinton. My tribe is my tākatoa. I'm really passionate in the medical health sector, and really I'm into Māori performing arts, so it's really nice to see your guys' type of dancing.
Kia ora tātou, ko Ashley Dye tuku ingoa. Ko Ngāti Kuri rawa ko Te Raroa toki iwi, so my name's Ashley Dye. My tribe's Ngāti Kuri and Te Raroa. I'm from far north like these two in New Zealand. I'm a traditional Māori tattooist, so tāmoko is my practice. But I also work in Indigenous conservation within my tribe and with youth, so youth mentoring.
Kia ora. So in closing, Ashley will just share with you a taonga that we utilise in our culture as a way of lifting the spirit, or wairua, after certain ceremonies, and is also used with our children as a way of teaching them to dream and aspire for greater things in life. Welcomed us and who have us on their land. So, tēnei te koha kia koutou. Mai mō mātou whānau, mō mātou iwi no Aotearoa. Kia ora.
Just. Quentin is only 18 years old, He likes to take long walks on the beach. And he's an Aries. No.
And he's not the tallest one.
He's not the tallest one in his family either. So.
Masi Cho to everyone who joined us up here for the welcoming, and thank you for that response from our Tēnā koe nā whānau o Aotearoa. And yeah. Thank you, Sean, and I understand my directions are to work on a PhD for the next conference, so I'll get to work on that.
Starting right now, 1 year. It's my pleasure to move this computer around and open this up. What's my password again? Alaska Native Studies Conference 2015. No. Oh yeah, I was going to do this. Take a picture of. I'm going to take a picture of you all. Can I have your permission to post it on Facebook? Okay, you're going to have to friend me on Facebook too. So no, but it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, and. She arrived in last night, and I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to start this to play. But her book is going to be available for sale after the keynote speech, after the keynote responses. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Sheila Watt-Cloutier as our keynote speaker for this morning. So please welcome her up. Before she speaks, can everyone move in because there's more people coming in and. How do I start the play on this thing?
It should be looping by itself.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like. Well.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't. Okay.
I'll wait till people are a little settled down.
Okay, if we could have everyone settle down, please, and we'll have Dr. Sheila talk about the right to be cold.
Nakorme kilunasi. O kausigani atulau kalunga kisiani usungum migama. Inuktitut. Inuktitut kisiyaungi kaloagoma. Ilang inu immakatu kisiyagun nakaloaktunga. Nakorme marealuk. Tamunga titaw migama Alaska mut. Nakoksapunga. Wonderful to be back in Alaska. It's been since 2006 that I have not been here. I got here, I was just finishing my term as ICC chair when I was here last in Barrow, I believe. So, but first I want to start by saying I do speak on the land of the Dene, and I respect that and I honor that, so I'm grateful for that. And I am grateful that I have been invited by Sean and Jessica and Yvonne. Yvonne, I haven't seen, I think it's closer to 15 years, Yvonne. And I recall a time I was very, very impressed with this young man years ago when we were working together in the international arena. And more recently, you know, in the preparation of writing the book and so on, I had these trunk loads of things, of papers and documents and memos and letters and articles and so on that went way back. As you start to research to try to write a meaningful book, you have to do a lot of sorting and a lot of your own research, in fact, into what it is that you want to put in there that would have some kind of a meaning and contribution and resonance of truth with others, and try to make a change in some small way to the challenges that we face as a people. And in one of those trunks, and I've moved, by the way, about 5 or 6 times in the last 6-7 years. And some of it has been for visiting scholar positions, one in the US in Maine, in Bowdoin College, another in Canada. And then I was finishing up the book and on a tour in Montreal, so I had to end up down there for a couple of years as well. But in the beginning, when I started to look through some of the papers, I came across a piece that Yvonne had written. You know, very in-depth as he was, even as a young man, not to say you're not a young man anymore, as you clearly indicated to the audience, you were still. So, and I came across this piece that was just very powerful, and I really regret that I didn't bring it with me, because, oh, dang, it would have been a good point here now to make from your words, but eventually. You may not have kept it yourself, I don't know, but I will certainly relay that back to you when I get back and I'm fully unpacked. I've just gone back to my roots, to my, I've always been in my homeland in Nunavut for the last 15 years. Mind you, most of my life has been in the last 15, 20 years living on an airplane going somewhere to tell the stories of our world and how the world needs to address these issues in protecting a way of life that really has a great deal of significance and importance to the rest of the world. And I really appreciated the opening comments, the prayer, but the opening comments on how important our way of life is and how meaningful it is, not just to ourselves, but to the rest of the world, and that we certainly can contribute and have been contributing to a world that has largely lost its relationship to itself and to its food source and to its environment. And we as a people, when I say we, it's not just from my own Inuit family and community that I speak, but for all of us. And I see some familiar faces that I have worked with before through ICC. And so these are all important pieces that need to be brought together. And I'm very encouraged by the words that everyone has said this morning on what you are doing here. It's encouraging, inspiring, very impressive, and it should be replicated everywhere. We happen to be in a place right now where some issues in Nunavut are being debated about a bill that is trying to be passed about the possibility, or that some people tend to think that perhaps our language and culture are getting in the way of moving forward. And I cannot believe for the life of me how that came to be even a debate or a thought, much less a debate now in this area, because the transference of what we have traditionally is very much needed for us, all of us as Indigenous peoples, to show and showcase this to the world and share it to the world, a world that is really lost in trying to find a sustainable way of living, not just with the environmental degradation that's happening up here in our homelands, and not just with climate change, but all around. There is a real sense of loss to being in that place where we have much respect for all. So I was born in Kudjuk, a little community village at that time, a little Hudson's Bay Company trading post in Old Fort Chimo, born and raised only by my grandmother and mother. The fathers didn't stay in those years, the white fathers, and traveled only by dog team the first 10 years of my life, and went on to start school at the age of 6 and started to learn English at the age of 6. Then at 10, I was sent away for school, like many young Canadian children, off to be raised by strangers and in a residential setting as well. I went through 3 years of that, and then high school in Ottawa. Lost my language, a great deal of it, but I was able to gain it back as I really pushed myself when I got home at the age of 18 to work in a setting that would force me to speak every single day, as I became an interpreter at the clinic, at the medical center there. And so with the support of elders and my family, I was able to gain back my language. In those years, I mean, the transition, and I'm just going to, walk you through a little bit of what I have chosen to write in a way that tries to contribute, as I say, to some of the recognition of what's happened in our world. Because for us, I know in Alaska, I would assume it's similar challenges that you face, but in my world, in the Nunavik and Nunavut, we are losing our youth in very high numbers to suicide, self-destruction. But at the same time, there is a parallel process happening as well with youth who are really coming out to the forefront to defend and protect and be much more voiceful than my generation was, as I'm coming from that very oppressed and suppressed era where we were not allowed to speak our language, where culturally all of the things that we held dear to us was taken away. And so I've tried throughout my adult life to try to piece together a lot of these things and put them into context. And in writing the book, when people now, like to decorate me for the work that I've done over the last couple of decades through all kinds of accolades and awards and doctorates and so on. But for me, it's never about me getting all of that. It's more about people getting it in terms of the message and the resonance of truth that people start to feel with this kind of global work that I have been doing. But to take the words of Maya Angelou, who once said, people know my glory, but they don't know my story. And I felt compelled to share the story from a very personal perspective. It is a memoir, but it also connects these larger pieces, of environmental degradation in the Arctic. It connects these pieces of what we have lost, and that if we were to lose more as a result of climate change, where will we be? But it's not one of, the energy behind the book is not one of victimhood. I have tried very hard throughout my entire life to remain as centered as I could, and that comes from that very foundation that I was born into, and I honor that. It is from my childhood and the way that I was raised with the values and principles of Inuit culture that I have been able to overcome many of the obstacles my way and come to terms with the traumas of my own past and try to contribute in the ways that I do globally. So that's the pretty much the intention or the reasoning behind I wanted to share the story in book form, perhaps so that it could reach more living rooms, not just in Canada, but in the US and beyond, for that, our younger generation, of course, to better understand. Of course, it's to reach out and get the world to better understand these issues for what they are, because the context of the struggles that we face, most people don't understand that. They have not really fully understood those kinds of health and social challenges that we face with our Aboriginal communities across our countries. And putting them into context has helped to better understand those. And that if we can continue to reach out and educate and have these teaching moments with others who know very little about who we are, much less the negative impacts that globalization is having on our world, then I think we would be making more headway in that sense. So reaching out is an important piece of this book. I wanted very much the younger generation in my world to better understand that context as well, because it is that generation that carry the heaviest load, the heaviest burden of the historical traumas that have happened in our world. And in Canada, very few people, again, including our own children, are not taught what has happened, what has come to be, where we have come from this very powerful, ingenious culture to one that is highly now dependent on institutions, substances, processes. What has happened here? And so the better understanding was also a great intention on my part to try to piece together some of these pieces, not as a historian. I'm not even a writer per se, but I felt I had a story to tell from my lifetime and share it with that generation, because our youth are not fully understanding why our families are struggling, but they carry the brunt. And for them to better understand that context, I wanted to alleviate a little bit of that. If I could alleviate a little bit of that burden that they carry, then perhaps they wouldn't take it as personally. Because often that's what we do, because we're living that trauma within our own family structures, our communities. And then to think, is it my fault? Is it me? What's going on here? And to not understand that is very difficult, especially when you don't have a lot of resources around you that guide you and help you through understanding these pieces of our history. And so that was a very big reason. I have two grandsons who are being raised in Iqaluit. One is now 19. He's graduated. I thought of that when the young 19-year-old was singing. And I have another little one. He's 4, and they're both being raised by my daughter, a single mom, in Iqaluit in Nunavut. And so this is their home, and these are the influences that they are being raised in, not only with the powerful culture that we come from, but also the challenges that exist there. And so the story starts from that very human aspect, from my own upbringing, my own experiences, the losses throughout that process. And it brings me into places of working on education issues, where in the late 1980s into the early 90s, we thought very deeply about our education system. We had been very successful in negotiating. Our land claims organizations had been negotiating with governments on agreements to allow us to better control our institutions, and new institutions were built and so on. And but many years later, as we seemingly were in control of all of these institutions, it seems the social and health and education indicators were not getting any better. In fact, many things were getting worse. And so we started to think and ask a lot of hard questions about what we were doing and what we were doing wrong. Is there something that needs to be addressed? What is happening here? Our schooling systems seem to have watered down the programs to make it so that students can succeed easier. But in reality, we realized there's a difference between succeeding and achieving as well in education, and that there were just too many things happening that programs were being watered down. In the name of, our children might not be able to tackle the challenge, so let's water down some of the programs so that they can at least succeed and we can pass them along. So this social passing was going on for a long time, and oftentimes in our schools it still continues. So we've been trying to address this issue for a long time. 25 years ago, we did this work, and we came out with a report called Sila Tunarmut, The Pathway to Wisdom. to address the issues that we felt needed strengthening in our school systems, so that they could also be aligned with our emerging self-government in those days, 25 years ago, and we're still not there. So we seem to be perpetually stuck in this place where we can't seem to move forward as quickly as we need to in order to address the issues that we're faced with still with our youth population and our employment opportunities and the poverty that exists up there and the hunger that exists up there in the Arctic. And as we're starting to recognize all of these issue areas, we realize that there are new waves of big challenges coming about. As we realize that what is powerful and strong for us to be able to stand on our feet once again is our culture, is our language, it's our way of life. It's the values and principles that underpin our way of life that really is going to contribute to the solutions. And it's really going to be the way to go, because most people have not really fully understood and still today don't understand the power of a hunting culture. That, a hunting culture not only teaches you the technical aspects of how to become a proficient provider and a natural conservationist, but it also teaches you the character skills and the life skills that one takes away, and they can be transferable to anywhere you go after. And what I mean by that is, as you're out there waiting for the snow to fall, the winds to die, the animals to surface, you are being taught patience. You're being taught how to be courageous at the right time. You're being taught how to be bold under pressure, how to withstand stressful situations, how not to be impulsive. If you're impulsive, you're putting yourself at risk as well as everyone around you. All of those kinds of life skills that lead to developing your sound judgment and your wisdom is what traditional indigenous peoples teach their children out on the land. And if you take that away in an institutional learning system and sever them, and you never put them back together anywhere else, then it's no wonder, along with all the tumultuous changes that have happened in our world, that our school systems are failing many, and had failed many of our students, of our kids. And so we looked at all of that while we were going through that process of investigating our education system and why it was not working that well. In fact, why were we failing our kids rather than pointing at our kids failing in the system. And so that was a big part of the work that I did before I even entered into the arena of elected politics, as we were looking at these issues for ourselves. And we came out, the report, as I say, was Siletu Narmut, the Pathway to Wisdom. We came out with 101 recommendations for change. In other words, as I say in my book, we wanted to change everything. And as everything goes, even though we have not been entrenched in such institutional lives, it became very apparent as we were, certain commissions were set up, like the Education Task Force was set up. There were organizations already in place, Makivik, Kadivik School Board, Kadivik Regional Government, and so on. It became very evident that even though we hadn't been in the institutional world for hundreds of years, like many people, we were quickly entrenched in them. It became a real tough battle to even have our own organizations who held the education mandates to not become defensive and say, no, we're doing great, leave us alone. It just takes time. And so to make a long story short, because I'm hoping you'll read it in the book more in detail, it was a real challenge. But at the end of the day, we did come out with those recommendations. And again, the implementation of them is just so difficult to do. And so 25 years later, I think we've been able to implement a lot of things, a lot of areas that are going strong. And certainly in my region of Nunavik, our language is the strongest, in our country as an Aboriginal language, Inuktitut. And everybody in my region of Nunavik. Almost everyone speaks it, right from little to old, which is very encouraging, and it's just wonderful. And so that's the stepping stone, I guess, in a sense, when I kind of stepped into that kind of leadership in our region to address these issues of education and the working with the youth in terms of what it is that we need to address was a learning experience, certainly, but it was one that we learned very quickly that politics often slows down the process. Even our own political organizations that we've created can become a hindrance to moving forward on the issues. We know the problems, we've identified them, we've marked them down, we've got recommendations, but yet 25 years later, some people say we should just go back to that report and try to revamp it, and it would be the same today. Now, I'm not trying to be discouraging about these things because there are a lot of things that have happened. But again, what shows us that much more needs to be done is that, again, the social indicators and the health indicators have not necessarily improved a lot. We have a crisis of suicides, especially in my region now, still. And people are still trying to grapple with what is it we need to do. So this work led way to a time when, in my life, when I had always said, I will never, ever enter into the arena of politics. There were enough political leaders, in my family and region that I just didn't feel like I would be compelled to go on that path. But in life, it's not always about your plan. It really can be about the universal plan, however you name the higher power, Buddha, God, the universe. There always is a way in which your life's work finds you. And certainly that was the case, because very few people know this about me, but I do say it in the book. I'm actually an introvert doing extrovert work. But it can, and there's a young man who's raised his hand. So I see you, I recognize you, I honor you. And it's not an easy thing, but it can be done. And I'll get a little bit more into that after. But so I was just never compelled to do something that would bring me out so much into the public arena. But it happened, and I was on my way. I had been elected in my region with Makivik Corporation as a corporate secretary there, as an elected executive there. Went up to Alaska, to Nome, to Nome, as a delegate from my region, only to be coming home a week later with an international mandate as ICC Canada president. And I did that for 7 years, and then I became the international chair for 4 years of the 4 countries. And so when I got that mandate in Nome, it was a time when the global negotiations were starting on the persistent organic pollutants that bring poisonous substances into our food chain in the Arctic. And many of you in Alaska know this because we all carry that brunt. We became, as Inuit, who are marine mammal eaters, became the net recipients of toxins in our food chain. And it was at a time when the global negotiations were starting up. And I became very quickly the coalition spokesperson at the global negotiations at the UN level to address these issues, but not just to address them, but to eliminate them at their source. Because it wasn't an issue of just managing these toxins that end up in our food chain. And this was not just an issue of an environmental problem or a chemical story. This was a first, was that it was a health issue for us. And when you have Inuit women having to think twice about nursing their babies as a result of these toxins, then you know we're in serious trouble. And you know that we had to address this issue as urgently as possible as a health issue and not just as an environmental issue. So that work brought me to these global negotiations with the coalition. We worked very closely together with the Dene, the Métis, Athabascans. There was lots of people from Russia as well. Our fellow Greenland Inuit were there, Russia, and we were really just putting the human face to an issue in a room full of people that were bureaucrats for governments, nation states, who were industry representatives, scientists, and so on. And to try to put the human face on this urgent health issue was indeed a daunting task. But we managed to do that by influencing, and as Yvonne mentioned, it's through that engaging in the politics of influence rather than the politics of protest. By concretely having the science in our hands, we were able to be effective in translating that science that had been developed over the years, with Alaska was involved, Canada, many of the circumpolar countries were involved, where it was very clear and evident that these poisons were in our bodies and the nursing milk of our mothers. And so we were able to carry that science and be effective in the global arena at the UN level and translate that into international policy. And at the end of the negotiations, the Stockholm Convention was signed, and we were able to have that Stockholm Convention be signed, ratified, and enforced in a very short period of time. That gave me a real sense of hope in the world at that time, because when you're out there where people, as I say, the world barely knows who you are, much less the negative impacts that their industry, their businesses around the world are spewing out these toxins, don't realize that they're having, what kind of negative impact they're having on an entire way of life at the top of the world. And so in that sense, I think we really managed to help the world to come together and see this as a human issue. So everybody, and there may be people in the room who are involved in some of that science as well here in Alaska, need to be very proud of that work. And it's not to say we're dancing in the streets, because there's still always toxins coming into the foreplay. Our polar bears, of course, now carry flame retardants that shows up in their blood, but we need to maintain and keep this issue in the forefront of the work that all do. That includes all of ICC who continue to work on these issues. So again, it's about shifting the stories that are brought out there by governments and bureaucrats and scientists and to one that has meaning for us on the ground, and not just meaning, but the urgency of what we are living on a daily basis. Because what a day it would have been if that global work had not been done, and that the Stockholm Convention has not been signed, and that it's starting to show the lowering of these toxins in our food chain. What a day it would have been where we would have been to that place where we would have had to choose between our country food and our cultural heritage. It's just even unthinkable that we would have gotten to that day where our food is extremely precious to us, not just in terms of nutrition, but certainly in terms of the cultural and spiritual aspect of our hunt. And as I say, and the teaching that goes into preparing our younger generation for the challenges and opportunities of life, and the holistic way, as I mentioned earlier, that we teach our children. Because people in the South who don't get these pieces often will say, why don't you just assimilate? Why don't you just go out and eat pork chops and chicken and the rest of it? Not knowing that there isn't just food. Our food isn't just food. It connects us to so many other things spiritually. And it teaches so much to be out there on that remarkable land that we fight so hard to protect. And we protect what we love. And it's to try to teach and have those teaching moments wherever I go, to try to get urban settings and people who are out there to really start to love nature. And the world is struggling with nature deficit disorder. Clear as that. Which is why we often see the debate on climate change. People have lost their connection to each other, to their food source, to their environment. And so we debate the issue of climate change because it has no meaning for those who aren't connected to their food source and to each other and to the environment. Oftentimes in urban settings, people will say, whoa, I'm still wearing my shorts and t-shirts in November. This is great. But not seeing the larger trauma of our climate. And it is no longer climate change, in my opinion. It is climate trauma. And just as our Aboriginal communities have gone through trauma and start to behave in erratic, unpredictable ways as a traumatized children, families, communities, so too is our planet. And we have to make those connections today. We have to understand it for what it is. It is climate trauma. Our planet is a living, breathing entity. And we have done so much damage to it, and it is in trauma. And we need to call it what it is. And so that work that I did on POPs led me to the work on climate change. ICC was a very small organization, still is, very limited resources. And so you have to be extremely strategic in how we come to the world and try to make a difference and try to educate and have these teaching moments. The human face on the POPs Treaty was very successful. We're very happy that we have that under our belt and our experience as we moved into the arena of trying to tackle the issue of climate change globally. And we thought long and hard about these issues and thought our strategy and our way of dealing with this has to come in very strong. It has to be much stronger than it was for the POPs Treaty. And nowhere else are the issues of toxins and climate change so parallel as they are for us here in the Arctic. They're both about cultural survival. They're both about health and well-being. And, but you know, in life, as I say, there is always this cosmic order to life. I believe in that very much so. I'm a very spiritual person. And there were people, as we were ourselves wondering, okay, what are we going to do to make this a larger issue where we can really capture the attention of the world? Not just because it was a political or media strategy, but because we knew the urgency of what we were dealing with on climate changes in the Arctic. And because most people don't know that for us, the ice, the snow, and the cold is mobility and transportation for us. And it brings us out to our organic farms, which is the environment. And as that starts to go, it's about security and safety and security. Those are everyday issues that our people are faced with in the Arctic. So, but there are times where in life, as you're thinking this stuff through as a leader, and my own leaders, my own boards were saying, what recourse do we have? Are we to try to bring lawsuits out there to people who are destroying our food chain, or the ozone layer that's so big now? We're getting skin cancer and cataracts in more numbers than we've ever had because of the UV radiation. And now the climate is really changing and creating havoc in our world. What do we need to do? To make a long story short, because I may be over speaking now, there were other people in the United States that had been thinking deeply about this. Not Indigenous peoples necessarily, but they had been thinking about the connection, the legal connection between climate change and human rights. And we too, in our own world, had been thinking about, okay, what are the strategies we need to do? And again, to make this a long story short, we started to work on a human rights legal petition to bring together and to bring to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, Washington-based. It took 2 years of preparation. And you, again, you can read through the full details of that, but you can also read the petition itself, where elders from Canada and elders from Alaska, we have their testimonies, and I have their testimonies, it's still on video, who contributed their remarkable observations of climate change to be used for this petition in the right to health, the right to educate, the right to subsistence, all of those rights that are already entrenched in the 1948 duties of man. And so it was a very creative way in which to try to bring this out and signal this out to the rest of the planet, to the rest of the world, to the policymakers. And after 2 years of preparation of this legal petition, which you can download, by the way, on earthjustice.org, and you can link onto the Inuit petition from that website. Powerful voices of our hunters and their observations are just amazing, and they were the strength of this petition. And they signed all their names to it as well. I was the lead petitioner, but they all support, many of them, except one of all those we interviewed, said, yes, we're in. One woman from Alaska said, tell Sheila I'll come to Washington with her. So it was a really great support that we had for doing this work. However, because it was groundbreaking and because it was ahead of its time, the commission as well in those days, there was a stronghold from the administration of the day in those days. And we didn't get to the point where they wanted to actually work with our Inuit petition. So in the end of the day, though, they ended up hearing us in terms of the legal connections between climate change and human rights. And I went down to testify with some of the lawyers that we had been working with. So, you know, the petition was considered what they say, probably, they said the best lawyering that they have seen in a long time. But don't forget, for us, you know, we weren't being used. It was a mutual use of the intellect and the lawyering, as people called it, with traditional knowledge that needed to be protected with our elders that were part of the testimony. And we were able to bring that to the world. Although they didn't hear our hearing, our own petition, they did have a hearing, and we were able to bring the issue out to the world in terms of a people defending their way of life through that process. And at the end of the day, I believe that it helped to change the discourse on this issue, where climate change oftentimes was left for the economists or the academics or the politicians to deal with, and that it was their thing, where we brought this issue forward as a human rights issue, a violation of the Inuit of the Arctic as a result of the inaction of the United States to lower their greenhouse gas emissions, brought this issue to the forefront as a human issue, a human dimension issue, and a human rights issue. You say, well, again, how so? Even Amnesty International was puzzled by this. She did what? Because most people in the world, even those who deal with human rights violations, deal with it from an individual perspective. Human rights of individuals being violated, torture, you name it. They could not wrap their minds around, at first, that is, came very quickly, but at first they could not wrap their minds around the fact that collective human rights could be violated. And that's what this entire petition was about, was that our collective rights as Inuit, our right to exist as we have always existed, with hunting and educating our children, health, our homes, all of that was part of those rights that were being violated as a result of the inaction of a large country like the United States at the time. And certainly we thought at the time those were challenging moments. Well, you have them again today, perhaps tenfold. But nonetheless, I won't get into the politics of all of this, but nonetheless, it goes to show we have a lot more work to do. We have a lot more teaching moments to give to a world that, that is going to be derailed. Our issues keep being derailed and sidetracked as a result of the politics. I say that. However, and I say this much more often now, I don't think the movement is going to be in the politics. I think the movement is in this, what you're doing here. I think it's in the youth who are the change agents and who are becoming stronger and stronger in the voicing. Not, where we in my generation have had to struggle to maintain and keep that voice going and to reclaim it. And in fact, even through the process of my writing of my book, I had periods where the challenge was so great to try to maintain my voice throughout the publishing process of it all. It became an extension of my life to maintain my voice. And it was quite interesting. I had to sit back here and go, okay, wait a minute. I didn't expect this. I didn't, I'm writing about this. These are the stories I'm writing. I did not expect that in this process. But publishing companies are big businesses. They want it a certain way. They wanted, I think, more to depict me as an environmentalist, which I do not consider myself to be. I'm an Indigenous woman, Indigenous person who is there trying to have these teachable moments to protect a way of life that she, in her living memory, has lived. And that keeps me grounded. And so we can never think that our life's issues are resolved completely, because there's a meaning to that too. And I've been rather positive about it. I said, well, because I wanted to write this book in my own voice, my own style, and I'm not a writer. I said we will never win literary prizes. I'm not a literary writer, but don't change my voice in the editing process, and that was the fight. And now anyone who has read my book says, I can hear your voice on every page. And I say, it was worth the fight, because for me, that's what it was about. And so again, somebody once said not long ago when it first came out 2 years ago, this is a love letter to her people. And I thought, yeah, that sounds right. And as I wrote that, not necessarily intellectually saying it was a love letter to my people, it is a teaching type of moment for me, not with necessarily, many of you who are resonating, because this is our lives as Indigenous peoples in here, whether you're from Alaska or New Zealand, where I was for a book tour in Auckland and Christchurch not so long ago, just last fall, and one of our wonderful filmmakers, Stacy Arluk, and her little girl, Nalajaz, who happens to be my grandson's half-sister, were just spending time in your area. And so we have that bond as well with the Māori. So, and that's how we connect. This is all about interconnectedness. We are not separate, and that's the messaging that I give as well, is that as we fight for our right to be cold, because our lives depend on that cold, and that cold is very, very wise. It has so much to offer. It has so much to offer to us, but it also has so much to offer in the understanding of the outside world that barely knows who we are, and who often equate the cold to shivering and it being dark and so on. For us, it's home, and it's precious, and that's what we fight for. So